Time for the Tesla and Palantir weekly update. So, just going to start with Tesla here on the weekly chart, showing you linear scale fibs that Tesla perfectly hit the 382, 221.26, even wicked below it, and it bounced. So, we did find some support there. Not only that, when we switch it to log scale, we can see that the log scale fib also closed back above this 618, the 242.44, which I think is actually more important than that linear scale fib because the log scale fib broke down levels week after week, right? And we went through this 3 weeks in a row, right? I told you guys we closed below this 886, the 353. That led to lower prices. Then we closed below the 786, the 306, and that led to lower prices. And then we closed below the 702, the 272, and that led to lower prices. So I always wait for weekly confirmations to determine direction. And essentially, for the past 3 weeks in a row, closing below levels, that meant that lower levels were possible. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. But now I think we finally found some sort of stabilization because we finally closed back above levels. Not only that, we also closed back above the SMAs here, the 50-week, sorry, the 200-week and the 100-week moving average. They closed below or closed above both of those, the 248.13 and the 245.17. But the only thing that we did close below still is this 50-week moving average at 267.14. So good news is we reclaimed lots of important support right here, but still not really ready to blast off into space yet, simply because we're not above the most important levels of resistance, which is really the 50-week moving average, and I think that 702. Reclaiming that would be kind of important. So the 272.79 down to the 267.14, that's going to be your next zone of resistance right there for Tesla. So good news is we're above a lot of important support, but the bad news is it's not looking like it's ready to explode. So I think we can just determine things can still just be range bound for the weeks to come. And even it is still possible to wick below these levels in the coming weeks and go back below the 242 just to make like another wick and possibly even close back above. So be prepared for just more volatility. Be prepared to retest this zone down here from the 240s down to the 230s possibly, because price likes to do that, right? It likes to test people's patience after getting into a nice little demand zone finally and stabilizing. So this could be part of the stabilization process by retesting this zone over and over again before going higher. So let's just look at this 242 up to the 248 zone as your support and see if it can actually continue to hold throughout the week. And now let's show you the linear scale Gann. And one thing I wanted to show with this linear scale Gann, and I've been showing this for a long time now if you go back to all my videos, and once it broke below this 358 and flipped it to resistance, it was all downhill from there, but it really went down to find its symmetrical support. So that's why when we look at fibs, when we look at moving averages, sometimes Tesla likes to cut right through it on the upside and the downside, but it usually respects symmetrical support and resistance very well. Just like when it went up to this 45-degree angle, I actually warned you guys to be cautious up here when it got up to the 460s, 470s, and sure enough, it was a good reason to be cautious because it just went straight back down. But it did cut through all of those fib levels as we saw before, but finally it reached the symmetrical support of the blue angle down here right around the 238 and the arc. So next week, we'll see that blue angle is right around the 240 zone and the arc is right around the 247 zone. So we could see some retesting of that zone, even a wick down below to the 230s again to continue to retest it over and over again. But ideally, I would prefer it to just stay on top of this arc because we can look in the past with this arc right here, right? We can see that it was a previous resistance for many weeks. Many weekly candles touched that arc in the past. And finally, after this big breakout, it is a backtest of that arc for the first time ever. So it kind of makes sense when you look at this linear scale Gann why it went so deep after all and why it cut through all those fib levels and moving averages, because perhaps it just wanted to go back and retest this arc for symmetrical support. So with that said, we can be a little bit more optimistic for the future, but just because we're optimistic does not mean that it can't go back a little bit lower to retest those levels before trying to go higher once again. And the last thing I want to show you is the Tesla on the weekly log scale Gann, and it also did the same thing, right? This log scale angle right here, it was a support back in January 2023, support all through 2024. And once again, it was a back test. But not only that, it was a back test of this arc right here. So ever since it broke out, it was a big breakout to the Gann level up here, the green level, and it just came back down to retest this previous resistance, right? You can see it was a resistance here, 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 and the first time it retested it as support. So that is going to be interesting too. And then we can see that arc next week will be around 250. Also, we can go back down to the angle here. It's also in the 230s, maybe 237, 236 in that zone. So this is just more confluence that price could easily go back down and retest the 240s to 230s to confirm it as support again and again. But I think we're looking at a bottoming process for a final continuation higher. And when we put on that weekly Ichimoku cloud too, one thing that stands out is we still have time to get to the cloud, right? Even if it doesn't go all the way down to the 213 there, we still have time just to go maybe sideways a little bit, even until possibly April or May before price really wants to climb out of that wall. But if it did do something like that, like go sideways here, maybe retest the arc or the angle down there, maybe it could do something like this. So perhaps by June, we could be retesting this arc as resistance again, which could be in the 350s one more time. Right, so we have an idea of what is possible now. All that needs to happen is this support needs to continue to hold, but it looks like, judging by the fibs, the moving averages, the Gann, everything, it looks like finally stabilization is in progress. And next we have Palantir. So Palantir, I want to just show you guys the 1.272 fib did finally get touched. So it did get touched. It did not touch the past couple of weeks, right? The past few weeks, it did just hover above it. But finally, it wicked below and it held. So now we have that 78.13 as your support. We can even put on the Ichimoku here just to show you that the baseline also held as support as well. And now that 80.49 is that baseline. So week over week, this looks okay. This looks like it has potential to continue to stabilize on top of that. Very bullish chart still. All it lost was this 104, the 1.414, and the conversion line there at 94.41. So it still can be just a little bit range bound, and it can also continue to retest the lower levels of support here, maybe in the 78, 77, 76 in that zone, because price likes to retest lows over and over again to shake people out before continuing higher. And there is more confluence of that too on the log scale Gann right here, which I can pull up. And I'll just take off that Ichimoku so we can see things a little bit more clearly. And yeah, it retested that blue level of the Gann one more time. And that is right around the 77 zone. So it could easily go back down there to retest it. But what I'm really watching to see if this arc can actually continue to maybe be a support. So next week, when it opens, that arc will be around 85, 89. And price did close at 86.24. So 85... yeah, so 85.90, that would be, if it maintained around the $85, $86 zone for the rest of the week, that could start to flip this arc to a support. And if it could do that, then I think it could continue a journey something like this to get a little bit more bullish sooner. But it was clear this angle right above was a resistance right here because we knew it was a resistance in the past back in 2023. So it got rejected there and it went right back down to symmetrical support and held. So it looks like we could just be in a range between the 76, 77, 78, all the way up to the 85 or 86 zone. But ideally, what I'm focused on is just to see if this $86 zone can actually hold as a support. And if it can continue to hold as support, then I think things could continue higher much sooner. So let's see. Let's watch that 86 level, 85.90. If it holds throughout the week and into the weeks to come, then yeah, this will probably be a lot more explosive sooner. But if it continues to trend underneath this arc here, then perhaps it'll just do something like this, right? That stay and retest these levels before trying to flip that arc to a support and going higher once again. So it just determines on price action which direction it really wants to go, but still, regardless, even if it wants to go back and retest these 76, 77 level, that is still a very bullish chart and very optimistic for the future.